To the Guantanamo Bay prison, President Trump has vowed to send new detainees to the detention facility, reversing former President Obama's years-long effort to shut it down. At its height, the facility held nearly 700, all but a few dozen have since been released. But where did they go, and what does their future hold? That's the topic of a new documentary from Frontline and NPR called Out of Gitmo. Arun Rath is the correspondent behind it and joins me now. He's been there a number of times. Arun, it's good to see you.
Likewise.
Can we talk a little background for a second? Obama promised, I know, in 2009, his first year, that he was going to shut it down. Never got there, even though the number, I think, when he took office was 240, and it's now down to the low 40s. Why didn't he achieve that commitment?
Well, the easy part was signing the order to close the place. Actually, closing it was what turned out to be more complicated. Because there were 240 people there, and they didn't know what exactly to do with them. So they started this process of sorting them out, kind of going through, and it was amazing because the files were not in good shape at the time. They didn't know exactly what exactly was going on with these 240 people.
You know, what's amazing to me, and I almost can't say these words, sitting here in the United States, our leaders have believed, not just now, that these people detained there are not covered by our Constitution, not covered by the Geneva Conventions, essentially have absolutely no rights. They can sit there for years and rot with no charges at all. No hearings, no charges, no nothing. Is that correct?
Well, that was the theory initially. Over the last 15 years, there's been establishment of some rights through Supreme Court cases. They do have rights to, say, contest their detention.
Through military tribunals or what? Through what?
Oh, no, through the court system.
Oh. Habeas corpus kind of thing?
Yeah, habeas, but they get really very complicated as well. I mean, that was the original legal theory, though, was that because they're not on U.S. soil, they could not make claims that the U.S. Constitution did not apply there.
So does the government acknowledge now that those rights do apply?
To an extent, yeah.
What does that mean to an extent?
Well, it's certainly more complicated in Guantanamo to be able to have your rights heard. I mean, basically, Jim, there's a legal process which is outside of our existing legal system. This review process which decides which prisoners stay, which go, how they're determined, that sort of thing, which is run by the State Department, multiple other organizations. But there is a process in place for them to be able to contest that. Now, whether that process survives at this point through the Trump administration is an open question.
So Trump, as candidate, said he was going to keep it open, forget closing this thing down. I believe his most recent comment is there's still a lot of bad dudes out there, in quotes, and he wants those bad dudes to get sent there as well. Is that fairly accurate?
Yeah.
Who are those bad dudes,
well,
to quote him?
I would presume this means ISIS. And we know from an executive order which the New York Times obtained that they're working on drafting an order which might involve sending ISIS captures to Guantanamo.
You followed, I mean, at the heart of this documentary, it's going to air, and I'll tell people the date in a minute, you followed a Yemeni detainee. He ultimately was released to Serbia. And he was there 14 years, right?
He was there 14 years.
And he was his mid-30s.
One of the first people to get in Guantanamo.
His whole adult life was spent in Guantanamo.
Yeah.
So what is life like for this guy? You followed him to Serbia. What's life like in Serbia for this guy?
Well, it's a weird thing, Jim, because you wouldn't think that Serbia would be a place where you would send a foreign-born Muslim who, is basically a country kid from Yemen. As we know, in the 90s, I mean, even going back beyond that, there's 800 years of bad blood when it comes to Muslims in that part of the world.
So how did it happen?
We don't know. The State Department, why they decided to send them there. The details
but
of these
Serbia had
deals
to agree to it, obviously.
Serbia agreed to it. They took two detainees, actually. But the details of those deals, what exactly Serbia got in exchange for that's all secret.
And how is, I want to see, how does he adjust or is adjusting to life after being at this place for, as I said, since he was 21 years old?
In a line, he's not adjusting. I mean, we get into this in a great deal of detail in the film, but I mean, he might as well be on Mars, again, for being a Yemeni. He speaks Arabic and English, and he's in Belgrade now.
What was he accused of initially?
He was initially accused of being an al-Qaeda commander, basically a general who was in charge of a brigade of al-Qaeda soldiers. He was accused of being having knowledge of the 9/11 attacks ahead of time. This was back initially. Jim, that changed. By the time he was released, they said that he was at best a low-level fighter and may not even have been in Al-Qaeda.
Was he ever convicted of anything in the 14
No,
years?
never charged. No charge.
Not even charged
Not even
for
charged.
14 years.
This is the case for the vast majority of them.
Before you go, I understand you also go to sort of the predicate of this whole Guantanamo thing pre-9/11 and these Haitian refugees. Can you give us a quick sense of that history, which I don't think most people know?
Back during the late 80s and early 90s, there was political turmoil in Haiti. People were fleeing political persecution. They were being killed. And so there were these loads of boats that were going out to sea. They would get picked up by the U.S. Coast Guard, and rather than being taken to, say, Florida, they took them to Guantanamo Bay, where they could not make claims for asylum. Again, they were in a place that was outside the law. They were held basically in a prison, even though they were refugees, not criminals.
And what ultimately happened to them?
There was a long court case involving a group of law students from Yale, fought the government and won their freedom, but the door was left open for the Bush administration later to come back and make this claim that Guantanamo could be used as this place where people could be held without recourse to constitutional rights.
I can't wait to see this. Not beyond the fact that I'm sure it's high-quality work, is this has fallen off the radar for so many people with so much else going on, except for people like you. So we're really looking forward to it. Arun, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And again, you can watch Out of Gitmo starting February 21st at 10 p.m. on WGBH2.